Thank you for tuning in. We're super excited because today we are going to settle the debate of all debates. You know about all the great debates throughout mankind, such as chicken or the egg. Are there aliens? And how old is the earth? Well, today we're going to settle the debate on traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. To get us started, we got to understand what is a traditional IRA and what is a Roth IRA. Simply put, one, you pay taxes before, and the other one is tax-free. So, I like Roth IRAs.
I love Roth IRAs.
Why?
Because it's like a super savings account, right? These are one of these retirement accounts that you get a chance to put in after-tax dollars, and all the growth that accrues into the account is tax-free, right? As long as you wait till 59 and a half. So you get a chance to put money into accounts, and basically when you get a chance to pull it out for retirement, you don't have to pay any taxes on any of that money. And I'm a big believer that the government doesn't know how to manage money. And so I'd rather pay today's taxes than what I think might happen later. So I'm a Roth person. Leo?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the industry as a whole, pretty much we've had a pretty positive outlook with the features of a Roth because you just don't get a tax-free benefit nowadays. I mean, nothing's free, as they say, right? And so to have an investment vehicle that allows individuals to grow retirement money tax-free by the rules themselves, I mean, what's not to like about that?
Okay, so how does that differ from a traditional IRA?
Yeah, traditional IRA, when you're making a contribution, your contribution is tax deductible. So what that means is it'll reduce your income, which should also reduce your taxes. And when the money is growing, hopefully, because in the account you can choose to invest your money in many types of vehicles. You can leave it in cash. You can do stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, real estate. As it's growing, you're also not taxed on that money, and that's why it's called tax deferred. But in the future, every dollar that you take out from a traditional IRA is taxable. And if you're not at least 59 and a half, not only do you have to pay taxes, but there'll also be a 10% penalty.
Another reason why the Roths are so powerful, right? Because, right, if I'm not mistaken, the Roth, if you take out money before 59 and a half, it is going to be FIFO, right? First in, first out, meaning that for some individuals that run into hard times and they need to take money out for some sort of emergency, they won't have to pay that penalty the same way they would in the traditional IRA. So I've always kind of referred to it as like a super savings account because you don't have to pay as many taxes in the event that you have an emergency.
Yeah. You guys said some good stuff. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So a couple things.
Yeah.
The Roth IRA contributions, what Lex is referring to is Roth IRA contributions you can always get tax and penalty free. So for example, if you put in $10,000 into Roth IRA and it grows to $12,000, you can always take the $10,000 that you put in tax and penalty free. But that extra $2,000 of earnings, you must be 59 and a half and have the Roth IRA for at least 5 years to enjoy tax-free income on the earnings. So, James, you mentioned if your traditional IRA grows.
Yeah.
Okay. So walk us through that. So are you telling me that if my traditional IRA goes down, using that same example, I put $10,000 into a traditional IRA,
Right,
and it actually ends up being $8,000. I have to pay taxes on the $8,000?
Yeah, that's every dollar that you take out from your traditional IRA, that's a really good point. Whether it's your contribution or it's money that's grown or have come down, every dollar that you take out of that IRA account is taxable. Because when you first made a contribution into that account, most people took a deduction. So for example, I think for this year, if you make a traditional IRA contribution, the max you can contribute below the age of 50 is $7,000. If you're at least 50, it's $8,000. When you're putting in $8,000 into your traditional IRA and you're deducting it from your income, you're reducing your taxable income by $8,000. And so because you're getting a deduction or a tax benefit today, and while the money is growing, you're getting a tax benefit today while it's growing. In the future, Uncle Sam wants their taxes because they gave you a benefit today. And as you mentioned earlier, the Roth IRA is quite the opposite. When you make a contribution today, you're not getting any tax benefits. But the investments also grow tax deferred. But in the future, if you're at least 59 and a half and you've had the Roth IRA for at least 5 years, what you put in and the earnings are all tax-free. So it's a very powerful tool, and I think that's why Alexis really likes it. So
One of many.
Yeah.
All right. So we said that this was going to be a debate.
Yeah.
And James said that some people get a tax deduction. So Leo, if you're one of those people, well, first of all, how do you get a tax deduction? Like, what are some scenarios where you wouldn't get a tax deduction? And secondly, if you don't get a tax deduction for the traditional IRA, does that tilt the scale in favor of Roth IRA?
Yeah. So scenarios that you wouldn't get a tax deduction. So if you have an employer-sponsored plan, you're eligible to contribute into an employer-sponsored plan. IRS says, hey, you have a plan with your employer that you're eligible to make contributions to. If you're not making those contributions into that plan, then the contributions that you would put into an IRA, specifically a traditional IRA here, would not be eligible to be a deductible contribution. So that's a specific scenario, especially because they're trying to have individuals contribute and participate in those plans. And really now, since we've gone away from pension style plans and really we're trying to push more of these defined contribution plans, the incentive is to have individuals participate in those plans. So if you are eligible to do that, they want you to do that. But the other question you had mentioned, what was the other one? You said it.
If you don't get a tax deduction for the traditional IRA contribution, does that tilt the scales in favor
Oh,
of
yeah.
Roth IRA?
Yeah, I mean, the true benefit for a traditional IRA is to get the deduction today. So a big part of the debate, and the big part of why people are hesitant to say, hey, a Roth is so much more beneficial, is because we just don't know what the tax situation is going to be in the future, right? So in many circumstances, the belief is, hey, we're in a lower tax rate and lower tax environment today than we have been in quite a while. And so what's the probability that, down the road, we're going to be in a lower tax bracket than we currently are in? So if you're not getting the deduction and you're not getting the tax benefit because of that deduction being made from the traditional IRA, then really it defeats the purpose of paying a lower tax on that dollar amount compared to paying a higher tax amount in the future.
I think that's why I always feel like tax professionals are people that are trying to not pay taxes in general. They always make the claim, well, when I stop working, my income's going to be lower. So therefore, my overall tax bracket's going to be lower. So when I do take those distributions, it won't be as big of a tax.
Right.
And that's why they, I guess, push that over the Roth IRA, because I still think there's still a lot of education on the Roth that people don't understand how powerful it can be.
Yeah, I mean, the income can be different, right? So your income today compared to what your income would be in retirement would make a difference in regards to what your marginal tax rate would be. But then also just legislation of what marginal tax rates would look like in the future would also make a big difference in compared to what your taxable rate would be today compared to the future.
Yeah, and sometimes just having a conversation with a client helps, with these situations, trying to determine if you go traditional or if you should go Roth. Because I've heard clients say, I've got a big tax problem, and then you look at their tax returns and you're getting a tremendous amount of refunds, and so you're gonna have to help understand each other. Why do you think you have a tax problem when you're getting such a big refund? Because to me, that opens the doors to things like maybe you should do a Roth. You're already getting enough deductions that you're getting actually money back. And so sometimes kind of helping clients define what is a tax problem and coming to an agreement and then deciding whether or not it is a true tax problem. And maybe it's time to think about the future because we don't know, like y'all mentioned, what legislation will be in the future.
Some Miss Cleo over here has the crystal ball. Who knows?
it's going to be higher. Well, I mean, that's kind of the conversation that I have, though, right? Is that I don't know what it's going to be, right? My prediction is it's going to be higher, and if we have the opportunity to have an employee-sponsored plan potentially have a Roth on the side, or have something to where we can hedge against taxes, I just think that's where the Roth comes in, and again, it just adds a lot of power to a scenario that is uncertain, that we do not know. At least it gives us that opportunity somewhere down the road to pick and choose based off whatever marginal rates are at that time.
It's probably worth mentioning too that these accounts are, I think they're easy to open, and so you can open them with any financial firm, even online through an advisor. But I've always been kind of surprised that as awesome as we think these accounts are, I've still been surprised to see so many people that are eligible to contribute and should be contributing based on their situation and are not doing so, just because they don't know enough about them. And there is, in my experience, there's still a tendency to think about taxes today versus the future. And that's where, as a planner, you really have to kind of make sure that your clients understand all of their options and the ramifications in the future. And that's the cool thing about as an advisor with some experience, is you've worked with different generations, and now you have clients that are just getting started. Now you have clients that are getting close to retirement, and that some have retired. And for those that are getting or are at retirement, one of the things they'll first say to you is, when you're telling them, hey, we're going to take money from your 401k or your IRA, all of that's taxable. And then usually you'll hear a comment, man, I wish I would have known, because if I was getting a refund or it wasn't really going to affect me that much, then I would have done this. And so that always makes you think, oh, okay, maybe for those that are just getting started, I'll make sure they really understand the ramifications in the future, and to help them make the decision.
I hear you, because I've heard that.
Yeah.
But I've also experienced where I've told people, hey, forego the tax deduction and put into a Roth IRA.
Uh-huh. What do they say?
You're laughing because you know?
No, I have no idea writing that check.
I need a tax deduction now.
Yeah.
So I get it that people say that, but
Right. Yeah. I think most people just don't want to pay taxes.
Right.
Yeah. Whether today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Ever.
So James mentioned eligibility.
Yep.
And Leo mentioned deductibility. Okay. So if I can't deduct, I cannot deduct a traditional IRA contribution, can I still contribute to a traditional IRA?
The answer is yes, right? It's a non-deductible contribution. We do have that for individuals that either have employee-sponsored plans and they have high income limits. So we refer to that as a backdoor Roth as an option, right? So where they put money into a traditional IRA, and then we almost simultaneously convert that and move that into a Roth IRA. So that way, even though they didn't get the benefit of a tax deduction, they at least get the chance of tax-free growth. Some of these individuals that we're talking about, because of those scenarios, they cannot directly contribute to a Roth IRA. And so this is kind of the workaround. And I think this is a great loophole for high net worth individuals that run across this.
Yeah, and they can't contribute directly to Roth IRA because they make too much money.
Correct.
Because there's an income limit. Yeah.
Income limit, and then also too based off plans, what are options, even with the spouse, right? A lot of times we have clients that will say, well, my spouse has this, so I'm doing this. And every now and then, especially when they're new clients, you kind of have to correct them and tell them you cannot do there's certain rules to this, and we have to follow these rules. I remember when I first got started, someone would say, I have a Roth IRA over here, so I contributed so much, but I also have a Roth IRA over here, I also contributed so much. And it's like, well, wait a minute, there's rules to this. And yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Rather than re-recording that whole thing, if we could just can we make a note to cut out that bit right there?
The rules.
Please, after I say the Roth IRA income limits, just cut out everything after that. Because whether you're covered by an employer-sponsored
doesn't affect that. Yeah.
Sorry.
No. Yeah.
Just re-recording everything.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So let me. Okay, I got it. Okay. All right. So now that we got a little bit of a background on traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs, you can find out a lot with a simple Google search, which is what we did. And there's a lot of great articles, a lot of literature, a lot of back and forth. One of the things that I've come across a lot is basically saying that there's no difference when you account for everything. But I think there's a major flaw in some of these assumptions or some of these articles.
Yeah.
They make a lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
So how do you all deal with that?
The assumption over time, really, when we're talking about this debate specifically, has to be the fact that tax rates are neutral. And I think that's a big one, right? At the end of the day, if we're paying the same tax rate on that dollar amount today as we do in the future, whatever date that may be, then you can assume, hey, really, there's no benefit here in regards to whether we're paying that tax right now or we're paying it later. Especially if you look at the consideration of the growth of the account, the dollar amount that we're putting in today, for example, $5,000 contribution, you're in the 20% tax bracket, meaning now that you have to pay 20% of the $5,000. So you're putting in $4,000 into that account. 10 years down the road, that dollar amount is now $8,000. Well, if you tax deferred that, you didn't pay the tax at that time frame, that $5,000 today doubles down the road, it's $10,000. Well, at that time frame, now you have to pay the tax on that dollar amount at 20%, it's still $8,000. So tax consideration at this point is the same. One thing that we've always discussed is the implication of taking additional income, and reporting it, right? So in a Roth IRA, the income that you receive is not considered ordinary income, right? Traditional IRA, it is. And so there's effects to having additional income coming in, especially in retirement. Social Security is a big one, right? So Social Security, the amount of Social Security income that's taxed to an individual is based on your income dollar amount. So if that goes up, your Social Security tax in all likelihood could go up. You also are subjected to a higher Medicare tax because of the income that you're receiving in retirement as well too. So these are things that over time, when we look at the different effects and also ancillary effects to receiving more income in retirement, those are things that typically don't get taken into consideration opposite of what just the tax aspect of it.
Yeah, sometimes when you look at IRS legislation and you see how the income limits and how much you're allowed to contribute to something what we think is awesome like a Roth, it almost tells you to take advantage because they're only letting you put in $8,000 every year. And that kind of already tells you this is probably an awesome account because the IRS is saying you can only
put so much into it.
And we're thinking we might get rid of this in the future. And Leo makes really great points, and that's what makes, I think, financial planning exciting, and also it drives you crazy because you've checked off so many boxes. Hey, we've been contributing into a Roth. The client's going to have, tax-free income, or if the client's been contributing to their 401k or IRA, based on what they're saving, they're going to be set for retirement. And if they don't have a tax flexibility and they don't have a tax-free account, and you start taking money from their nest egg, yes, they can retire and they're happy, but it's not tax efficient.
Right.
It's affecting so many other things like your Medicare premiums. Oops. That kind of income, is subject to potentially higher Medicare premiums. Or, oops, if we just did a little bit of this or took income from here, maybe our Social Security wouldn't be taxed as much. So it's like a domino effect. And I feel like to have a real solid financial plan, you're trying to check off so many boxes, especially taxes, if you can control it.
Yeah, I found a lot of the literature lacking discussion around taking money out.
Right.
So for the most part, to boil it down, it would say that if you expect to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, you're better off with a traditional IRA because it's tax deferred. So you get the 20% tax deduction today.
Yeah.
And if you're in the 10% tax bracket in retirement, well, then there's a little 10% arbitrage.
Sure.
Right. But it neglects, okay, what does that ordinary income from a traditional IRA do? Does it increase my Medicare premiums? Does it increase the taxes on my Social Security? So that's why I personally like a Roth IRA for the flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think generally what I usually tell people is make sure you contribute up to the match from your employer and your tax deferred vehicle. And if you can max out a Roth IRA, do that. If you can still afford to save more than that, put it into your employer sponsored retirement plan or a non-qualified account,
Right.
a taxable brokerage account.
Yep.
I think one of the things that's really nice too about the Roth is that you don't have to start taking money out at certain ages. And so, as we come across scenarios where you have retirees that are starting to either pay for medical expenses or are starting to look at how we're going to transfer over wealth from myself to my kids, there again plays another powerful between the two, right? Because most of my clients, I always feel like all their kids are superstars. They all have high income jobs. They're all making very good money. And so even that plays a factor into it too, because clients are typically lower income brackets and they have the two accounts. Well, if they were to transfer them over, right, the traditional IRA, they're going to have to start taking money out. Their kids are, the beneficiaries are, they're going to have to start taking money out within a 10-year period, and they might be in higher tax brackets compared to them transferring over the Roth where, they won't be penalized as much.
Yeah. Okay. What Alexis is talking about is traditional IRAs at the age of 73, you need to start taking required minimum distribution. Depends on what year you're born. It could be as high as 75. But the IRS or the government requires you to start taking a minimum amount every year that's going to be completely taxable to you, whereas a Roth IRA has no such requirement. Also, there's a new rule that non-spouse beneficiaries must take required minimum distributions from all IRAs and deplete the account within a 10-year period post-death. So those traditional IRA distributions will be completely taxable to your non-spouse beneficiary, i.e. Kids. Whereas the Roth IRA, you'll still have to do the same thing. You'll still have to deplete it within 10 years, but it's going to be completely tax-free. So a lot of this literature that you find online, whenever you Google traditional versus Roth, it kind of neglects all that. And that's super hard to quantify through any financial planning software. We try our best, and all software is going to require some assumptions. But the point is, you're going to want to visit with somebody, or try to do this on your own, and just look at all the assumptions that you possibly can, and make sure they're as realistic as possible.
A lot of variables.
Yeah, I mean, it's, to me, at the end of the day, if you're eligible to do it, I mean, we've within discussion, we've found very few, reasons why not to. But the eligibility becomes a big factor still at the end of the day, right? There's a lot of people that aren't eligible. And even utilizing the Backdoor Roth feature has restrictions because of, there's pro rata rules, things like that as well too. So, doing this on your own, I mean, me doing it myself for clients sometimes, becomes tricky. So doing it on your own can become difficult, especially when it comes to eligibility, limitations, deductibility, all those things that play a huge part in making the decision of what to do.
Okay, so can we consider debate settled, or is jury still out?
Yeah, it was the egg the whole time.
So there are aliens.
Barry Bonds, Barry Bonds is the home run king.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
He said,
Go on.
And thank you for tuning in. That's our 2 cents on your dollars.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to effect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal.